This story is titled, Golden Child Snapped, "You're just a burden here," and Mom and Dad agreed. I packed my bags and cut them off, but weeks later, they're at my door begging for money as they face eviction. Hey Reddit, I'm a 27-year-old guy working as a diesel mechanic at one of the biggest shops in Chicago. I've been doing this since I was 20, starting as an apprentice and working my way up through sheer determination and skill. Not trying to brag, but I've become pretty damn good at what I do. I'm the guy they call in when other mechanics can't figure out those complex diesel engines. At this point, I could tear them down and rebuild them with my eyes closed. This isn't the life my parents wanted for me, though. My mom, 54F, and Dad, 56M, had this whole different plan mapped out for my future. They desperately wanted me to go to college, get some cushy office job, and be their perfect success story they could brag about at family gatherings. When I told them I was going to trade school instead of college, you'd think I had announced I was becoming a professional dumpster diver or something. The disappointment on their faces was palpable, and they made no effort to hide it. Then there's my younger brother Ethan, who's 22. This kid, man, where do I even start? Picture the most stereotypical entitled young adult you can imagine. Then multiply that by 10 and you'll get a rough idea of what Ethan is like. While I'm out there busting my ass in 98-degree heat, crawling under trucks and coming home looking like I took a bath in motor oil, this dude's living his best life, playing video games and finding himself, with zero responsibilities or expectations. The real fun started when I turned 23. I was making decent money by then, not Elon Musk money or anything, but solid enough to have my own place if I wanted. That's when my parents hit me with this whole emotional family should stick together speech. Stupid me. I actually bought into it, thinking they genuinely wanted me around. That's when they dropped the bomb. I needed to start paying rent, $900 a month to be exact. Now, I'm not against paying rent. That's completely fair, right? I'm an adult making money and should contribute to the household expenses. But here's where it gets really messed up. Ethan pays nothing. Zero, zilch, nada. Their excuse? He's still in school. Yeah, school meaning taking 2 classes at community college, classes that they're paying for, which he's probably going to fail anyway because he spends more time on his Xbox than in the classroom. Let me break down a typical day in our house so you can get a better sense of the ridiculous double standards I've been dealing with. I'm up at 5:15 every morning, at the shop by 6:30, and working my ass off all day. I'm constantly dealing with crazy deadlines, angry customers who need their trucks back on the road yesterday, and diesel engines that weigh more than Ethan's entire car. It's physically demanding work that leaves me exhausted by the end of each day. Meanwhile, Ethan rolls out of bed whenever he feels like it, maybe goes to his one class of the day if he's feeling particularly ambitious, then parks his ass on the couch for his daily gaming marathon. Mom makes his breakfast, his lunch, his dinner, does his laundry, and even cleans his room. The kid's living like he's got a personal butler service catering to his every whim. Me? I'm lucky if there's any food left when I get home after a 10-hour shift. Half the time, I'm grabbing Wendy's on my way back from work because Mom didn't know when I'd be home, so she didn't make extra. Apparently, the concept of leftovers doesn't exist when it comes to me, even though I work a regular schedule and have for years. The double standards were so obvious it was almost comical. If Ethan leaves dishes in the sink for days, no problem. If I leave a single coffee mug on the counter, suddenly I'm being disrespectful to the household. If Ethan wants new gaming equipment, they'll have it ordered before he finishes asking. But if I need new tools for work, my actual job that pays the bills, it's you make good money, you should pay for that yourself. But here's the real kicker, and I didn't find this out until much later. They were using my rent money to pay the mortgage, not like contributing to it. They were straight up using my $900 to make the entire monthly payment. So basically, I was paying for the roof over all our heads while being treated like some unwanted house guest who should be grateful for the privilege of staying there. I tried talking to them about it multiple times, but every conversation went exactly the same way. Me, don't you think it's unfair that I'm paying rent while Ethan lives here completely free? Mom, he's focusing on his education. Me, he's barely passing his classes and spends most of his time gaming. Dad, don't be jealous of your brother. Me, when I was his age, I was already working full-time supporting myself. Mom, everyone's path is different. Dad, if you don't like it, you can always move out. And round we'd go. It was like talking to a brick wall. except the wall was actively gaslighting me. The crazy thing is, I put up with this treatment for years, kept telling myself it was temporary, that eventually they'd see how messed up the situation was, or that Ethan would grow up and start contributing. Instead, it only got worse. Way worse. On top of everything else, my parents had this really interesting way of defining what rent actually covered. According to them, that $900 only covered my bedroom and basic utilities. Everything else? That was apparently extra. Want to use the washing machine? That'll be $35 extra per month for water and electricity usage. Want to park in the driveway instead of on the street? $60 monthly parking fee. Need to store your work tools in the garage? Another $45 for storage. I wish I was making this up, but this was my actual reality. Meanwhile, Ethan was living like he was at a 5-star resort. The kid had the master bedroom. Yeah, you read that right. They gave him the bigger room when he turned 18 because he needs space for his gaming setup. He had his own private bathroom, while I was sharing one with my parents like I was still in high school. And get this, he had a dedicated gaming room that used to be my dad's office. They literally moved all of my dad's stuff to the dining room so Ethan could have a proper streaming setup for his non-existent audience. One day I was doing a simple oil change on my truck in the driveway, because where else was I going to do basic maintenance? Ethan came out whining about how the noise was ruining his stream. My dad actually had the audacity to tell me I needed to do my vehicle maintenance at the shop instead, on my day off, using shop equipment that I'm not supposed to use for personal vehicles. All because it was disturbing precious Ethan's Twitch stream that had maybe 15 followers on a good day. But the real cherry on top of this sundae of inequality? They started itemizing my food consumption. No joke. Mom would go grocery shopping, and suddenly there's a list on the fridge with Greg's portion calculated down to the last slice of bread. A gallon of milk? That's $4.75 added to my tab. Use 3 eggs for breakfast? $1.80. Want some of the dinner Mom cooked? Better cough up your share of the ingredients. Ethan, though? This kid was eating like a king. Mom made special trips to Whole Foods for his dietary preferences. Translation: he watched some YouTuber talk about organic food and suddenly decided he's a health guru. He had his own snack cabinet that was literally labeled Ethan's Do Not Touch. Meanwhile, I bought myself a pack of protein bars and found half of them gone the next day. When I brought it up, Mom had the nerve to say, "You should hide your food better if you don't want to share with family." The irony of sharing with family was so thick you could spread it on toast. The financial drain wasn't even the worst part. It was the constant psychological warfare. Every family dinner, the ones I was allowed to join if I paid my portion, turned into a highlight reel of Ethan's achievements. Ethan might start streaming full-time. Translation: he's dropping out of community college. Ethan's got such a good eye for investments. He bought some sketchy cryptocurrency after watching a TikTok about it. Ethan's really finding his passion. He spent $350 of their money on a course about becoming an influencer. Me? I could literally rebuild an entire semi-engine, save a trucking company thousands in repairs, get a commendation from my boss, and the most I'd get is a disinterested, "That's nice, honey," before they'd immediately turn back to Ethan. "Ethan, tell us more about your new YouTube channel," they'd say, completely dismissing any of my accomplishments. The worst part was watching my skills and hard work get completely dismissed while they celebrated Ethan's every minor achievement, as if he'd discovered the cure for cancer. I won Mechanic of the Month 3 times in a row at my shop, an honor that comes with actual recognition from industry professionals and a decent bonus. And all I got was crickets at home. Meanwhile, Ethan got 100 followers on Twitch, and Mom made him a special celebration dinner with all his favorites. One particular day really stands out in my memory. I had just finished a massive job. We're talking a 16-hour marathon day where I performed a complex transmission rebuild on a $230,000 truck that needed to be back on the road ASAP. The customer was so impressed with my work that they sent a thank you letter to my boss and gave me a $500 tip. In my industry, that kind of recognition is rare and incredibly meaningful. I came home actually excited to share some good news for once. I walked in the door and was immediately confused. The house was in full celebration mode with balloons, cake, the whole 9 yards. My first thought was maybe they'd finally noticed my hard work and achievements. Maybe they'd heard about my promotion or bonus through the grapevine. For a brief, naive moment, I thought this might actually be for me. Nope. Ethan had just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Mom had invited his streaming friends over and ordered catering, with my rent money probably. Dad even bought him a new microphone as a congratulations on your success gift. When I tried to share my news about saving a client thousands of dollars and getting a substantial tip for my expertise, Mom literally patted me on the head like a dog and said, "That's great, honey. Oh, could you transfer your rent early this month? We need to upgrade Ethan's internet for better stream quality." I wish I could say this was the worst it got, but believe me, this was just the warm-up. The real show happened about 3 months ago, and it was the final straw that broke this camel's back. For context, I had just invested about $9,500 in a new professional tool set. If you're not in the diesel mechanic industry, that might sound completely insane, but any mechanic will tell you that high-quality tools are your lifeblood in this profession. We're talking snap-on everything. Ratchets, sockets, specialty diagnostic equipment, the works. I had to finance part of it, but it was worth the investment because these tools were literally my future, my career, my livelihood. I kept most of my tools at the shop in a locked cabinet, but I had this one toolbox at home for side jobs and personal projects. Nothing crazy expensive compared to my main collection, but still probably worth around $2,300. I had it organized perfectly, every tool in its place, everything labeled and arranged for maximum efficiency. Yeah, I'm that guy who needs everything in perfect order. I even had some specialized diagnostic equipment I'd saved up for months to purchase. One particular day, I'd pulled a double shift because we had a fleet of trucks that needed to be ready by morning. I'm talking 16 hours of non-stop, physically demanding work. My hands were shaking from exhaustion. I'd consumed enough coffee to kill a horse, and all I wanted was to take a hot shower and collapse into bed. I pulled up to the house around 11:30 p.m. and immediately noticed the lights were on in the garage, which was weird since my parents' cars were gone. But whatever. I was too exhausted to care about anything except getting some sleep. I just wanted my bed. I walked into the garage and my heart literally stopped for a second. My toolbox was on its side, tools scattered everywhere across the concrete floor, and there was Ethan and his friends, clearly drunk out of their minds, using my professional diagnostic scanner as a doorstop for their beer pong setup. You know that moment in movies where everything goes quiet and the camera zooms in on the main character's face as time seems to slow down? That was me in that moment. I literally couldn't process what I was seeing at first. These drunk idiots had turned my garage into their personal party zone, and my tools, my livelihood, my investment in my future, were being used as their party props. "Yo, Greg!" Ethan slurred like this was totally normal behavior. "We needed space for the table. Hope you don't mind, bro." Mind. My $1,400 diagnostic scanner was holding open the garage door. My socket sets were scattered across the floor like confetti after a parade, and my toolbox, my perfectly organized toolbox, looked like it had been hit by a Category 5 tornado. I lost it, but not in the way you might expect. It wasn't the yelling, throwing punches kind of losing it, though believe me, I wanted to. Instead, it was that cold, deadly calm kind of anger where your voice gets really quiet and controlled. "What the fuck did you do, Ethan?" I asked in a tone that finally seemed to penetrate his alcohol-soaked brain that something might actually be wrong. This absolute waste of DNA just shrugged like he was completely baffled by my reaction. "Chill out, man. They're just tools. We'll put them back later." Just tools? I walked over to my scanner and sure enough, the screen was cracked down the middle. That's $1,000 right there. Minimum, just gone. I started checking my other tools. Sockets missing, ratchets damaged, precision instruments I used for calibration work just completely gone. And these drunk idiots were still trying to play beer pong around me like nothing was wrong, like they hadn't just destroyed thousands of dollars of professional equipment. That's when one of Ethan's friends, some douchebag in a Supreme hoodie that probably cost more than he makes in a month, stumbled and spilled his entire beer all over my electrical testing equipment. Probably another $550 down the drain, literally. I grabbed Ethan by his shirt collar, which wasn't my proudest moment, but I'd absolutely had it with his entitled behavior. "Do you have any idea how much this stuff costs?" I demanded, my voice still terrifyingly calm. He pushed my hand away, getting aggressive now. "Get off me! Dad will buy you new ones if they're so precious," he slurred, his breath reeking of cheap beer. "Stop being such a bitch about it." "Dad will buy me new ones? Dad will buy me new ones?" I started taking pictures of everything. The damage, the beer cans, the whole scene. I needed documentation of what these idiots had done to my property. Ethan started looking nervous as he watched me methodically photographing the destruction. "What are you doing?" he asked, a hint of worry finally creeping into his voice. "Documenting everything before I call the cops," I replied evenly. That sobered him up real quick. "You wouldn't dare. We're family," he said, as if the word family was some magical shield that protected him from the consequences of his actions. And that's when my parents walked in. Perfect timing, right? Mom took one look at the scene and started yelling at me for grabbing Ethan, completely ignoring the destruction all around us. Dad was right behind her, already running his mouth about how I was overreacting. "They're just having some fun," Dad said, like I was the asshole for being upset about thousands of dollars of damaged professional equipment. "You can't expect them to not use the garage just because you keep your stuff in here." I showed them the broken scanner with its cracked screen, thinking surely they'd understand the severity once they saw the actual damage. Mom's response? "Well, maybe if you paid more rent you could have a proper storage space for your things." That was it. That was the moment something in me just broke. Or maybe it finally got fixed. I don't know which. I looked at them, really looked at them. My mom fussing over Ethan like he was the victim in all this. Ethan smirking behind them because he knew he was untouchable. My dad glaring at me like I was the one causing problems. "You're right," I said very quietly. "I should get proper storage for my things." I went upstairs, grabbed my laptop, and started making calls right away. That night, after everyone went to bed, Ethan passed out on the couch, of course, without cleaning up a single thing. I sat in my room and did something I should have done years ago. I made a spreadsheet. Yeah, I know, super exciting, right? But trust me, this spreadsheet became my weapon of mass destruction, the foundation of my escape plan. I meticulously documented everything, every single penny I'd paid them over the past 4 years. $900 monthly rent $43,200. Utility fees $5,600. Parking fees $2,880. Storage fees $2,160. Food contributions roughly $8,400. Various household expenses they made me cover $6,000 plus. Grand total, almost $68,240. $68,240. Let that sink in. That's not even counting all the tools Ethan and his friends destroyed in their drunken party. While I was putting these numbers together, trying to process just how much I'd been taken advantage of, I got this text from Ethan. "Hey bro, sorry about the tools and stuff. Dad says he'll give you $200 to replace anything that broke. We good?" $200 for thousands in damaged professional equipment. I didn't even dignify that with a response. Instead, I started making calls. First to my buddy Tyler, who works in real estate. It turned out he had a client with a garage apartment for rent, a place where I could secure my remaining tools and live in peace. Then I called my bank to check my savings. Thank God I'd been putting money aside despite my parents bleeding me dry. Finally, I called my boss to ask about picking up some extra shifts to build up my financial cushion even more. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember how I mentioned I'd been paying their mortgage without knowing it? Well, I did some digging that night. Turns out my $900 rent was exactly the amount of their monthly mortgage payment. Not close to it, exactly it. They hadn't been contributing a single penny to the mortgage in 4 years. They'd been using me as their personal ATM while treating me like an unwelcome house guest. So I came up with a plan, a beautiful, karma-filled plan that would teach them exactly what happens when you exploit someone for years and then throw them under the bus. First step. I signed the lease on that garage apartment that same night. It was small, but it had a secure space for my tools and, most importantly, no entitled little brothers using my stuff as party decorations. I put down the deposit immediately. Second step, I started moving my stuff out quietly. Not everything at once. I'm not an amateur when it comes to planning. Just a few things each day when nobody was home. The important stuff went first. What was left of my tools, important documents, irreplaceable items. Nobody noticed because, well, nobody ever paid attention to my stuff anyway. Third step. I documented the tool damage meticulously. Took photos, videos, got written statements from 2 of Ethan's friends who were actually decent enough to feel bad about what happened. I made copies of everything and stored them in 3 different places. This would come in handy later, trust me. Fourth step. I went to the bank and opened a new account at a completely different institution. Started redirecting my paychecks there. Canceled all the automatic payments to my parents' accounts. But the masterstroke? I waited. See, I knew exactly when their mortgage was due, the first of every month. And I knew they hadn't saved a penny because why would they? They had their reliable cash cow living upstairs, faithfully paying for everything while being treated like garbage. The whole time I was executing this plan, life went on as normal. I kept going to work, kept nodding along at dinner when they praised Ethan's latest business idea. He was now convinced he could become a cryptocurrency millionaire, kept acting like everything was fine. Mom did try to talk to me about the tool incident once. She came to my room with that fake concerned look she'd perfected over the years, the one that was supposed to make me think she actually cared about my feelings. "Honey, I know you're upset about your tools, but Ethan feels really bad about it," she said, her voice dripping with insincere sweetness. Then came the kicker. "Maybe if you hadn't left them in the garage?" I just nodded and said, "You're right, Mom. I should find a better place to keep my things." She looked so relieved, probably thought I was finally understanding their side of things. Little did she know I was already 3 steps into my exit strategy. The best part? Ethan kept making it easier for me to justify what I was about to do. Every day there was some new BS. He borrowed my car without asking and returned it with an empty tank. He had his friends over again, making noise until 3 a.m. on a night when I had to be at work by 6. He even had the audacity to ask me to co-sign for a loan so he could invest in his streaming career. Meanwhile, I'm watching my parents enable everything as usual. Dad bought him a new gaming chair because his back was hurting from streaming too long. Mom was now doing his laundry and folding it and putting it away in his drawers because he was too busy with content creation. All while I'm still getting bills for my share of utilities and being told I need to contribute more to the household. But here's the thing about people who think they're untouchable. They never see the fall coming. And boy, was this going to be a long, painful fall for my dear family. I had my move-out date circled on my calendar, July 31st. Why that particular date? Because their mortgage was due the next day, and August was about to become a very, very interesting month for my dear family. On July 31st, I'd taken the day off work, first time in months, and made sure to wake up extra early, like 4:30 a.m. early. Why? Because I wanted to be gone before they could try to stop me, guilt-trip me into staying, or somehow sabotage my plans. I'd seen enough Reddit stories to know how these things usually go down. My new place was already set up. I'd been secretly moving stuff over for weeks. All that was left was my bed, my work clothes, and a few boxes of random stuff. I'd rented a small U-Haul the night before and parked it around the corner where they couldn't see it. The best part? I had scheduled my move for the exact day I knew would hurt them the most. See, their mortgage was due on the 1st, and I knew for a fact they didn't have the money. How? Because I'd accidentally seen my mom's online banking screen when she was asking me to loan her money for Ethan's new streaming microphone just the week before. Their account had less than $1,200 in it. The plan was simple: get my stuff out, leave my key, and ghost them until the inevitable meltdown. But you know what they say about best-laid plans. I was quietly carrying out my last box when Ethan stumbled out of his room. My brother, ladies and gentlemen, finally awake before noon, only because he'd been up all night streaming. He looked at me, looked at the box, and his hungover brain took a full minute to process what he was seeing. "What the fuck are you doing?" he demanded, his voice still raspy from sleep. I just kept walking, didn't even bother to look at him. That's when he noticed my nearly empty room through the open door. "Mom! Dad! Greg's trying to leave!" he yelled, panic finally setting in as he realized his meal ticket was walking out the door. Here we go. I heard the thundering footsteps as my parents rushed upstairs. My dad, still in his bathrobe, face already turning red with anger. Mom right behind him, already starting with the waterworks. "What is the meaning of this?" Dad demanded, using his authority voice. the same one that used to scare me when I was a kid. Not anymore. I set down my box calmly, trying to control my racing heart. This wasn't how I'd planned it, but maybe this confrontation was exactly what needed to happen. "I'm moving out," I stated simply. "Like hell you are. You can't just leave. What about your responsibilities to this family?" Dad bellowed, as if I was committing some kind of cardinal sin by wanting independence. I pulled out my phone, opened my spreadsheet, and took a deep breath. It was time to lay it all out. "You mean these responsibilities?" I asked, turning the screen toward them. I started reading out the numbers, every payment, every fee, every dollar they'd squeezed out of me while letting Ethan live like a prince. Mom's face transformed from fake tears to real panic as the numbers kept mounting up. "That's $68,240 over 4 years, I finished, letting the enormous sum hang in the air between us. "Oh, and here's the best part. I know that's been going to the mortgage that's due tomorrow." Dad's face went from angry red to ghostly white so fast I thought he might pass out. Mom grabbed the wall for support as the reality of their situation began to dawn on her. Ethan just stood there, mouth hanging open like a fish out of water. You can't do this to us," Mom whispered, her voice trembling. "Actually, I can, and I am. But wait, there's more." I pulled out a manila envelope from my backpack. "This is all the documentation of the tools Ethan and his friends destroyed. About $3,500 worth of professional equipment. I'll be filing a small claims court case next week unless I'm reimbursed in full." Ethan started sputtering incoherently, his hangover forgotten in the face of actual consequences. But you're my brother! You can't sue me!" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Watch me." Dad tried to step in front of the door, blocking my exit with his body. "You're not leaving until we sort this out," he said, trying to regain control of the situation. "I'm 6'2" and work with heavy machinery all day. Dad's 5'10" and hasn't seen the inside of a gym since the 90s. I just looked at him steadily until he moved aside, the physical reality of our changed dynamic finally sinking in. "The rent you've been charging me? That's more than my new place costs," I continued, picking up my momentum now that I'd finally broken my silence. "The utility fees you made up to fund Ethan's lifestyle? The storage fees for my tools? Look how well that turned out." I picked up my box again, determined to finish what I'd started. "I've got all the documentation, all the payments, all the texts where you demanded money, every receipt, every bank statement. If you try to cause problems, it all goes to a lawyer." Mom was full-on crying now, real tears this time as the gravity of their financial situation hit her. "Please, the mortgage, we don't have it." "Not my problem anymore. Maybe Ethan can start paying rent," I replied coldly. "Oh wait, that would require him to actually have a job." Ethan lunged at me in a burst of anger, but I easily sidestepped his attack and he crashed into the wall. Not so tough without his drinking buddies backing him up. "By the way," I added, heading down the stairs with my final box, "I've already changed my direct deposit information at work and closed our joint account. Good luck with the mortgage tomorrow." I heard Mom collapse onto the floor, sobbing. Dad was yelling something about family duty and responsibilities. Ethan was still threatening me, but now, from a safe distance, his courage evaporating when confronted with someone who wasn't intimidated by him anymore. I loaded my last box, got in the U-Haul, and drove to my new place. There was total silence from them for about 6 hours. Then the text started. Oh boy, did they start? Let me paint you a picture of how that first day went down, hour by hour. I watched their messages evolve from anger to panic to straight-up desperation. It was like watching the 5 stages of grief in real time, except nobody had died, just their financial stability. The first wave came from Dad, all righteous anger and indignation. 8:15 a.m., get back here right now. 8:20 a.m., you're making a huge mistake. 8:45 a.m., no son of mine acts this way. 9 a.m., answer your phone. Then Ethan jumped in, showing his usual maturity and eloquence. 12:15 p.m., dead when I find out. 12:20 p.m., hope we're happy breaking up the family. I didn't respond to any of them. Just kept screenshots of everything for my records in case things escalated further. I wasn't about to get pulled back into their manipulation tactics. But around 3 p.m., that's when reality started hitting them hard. The mortgage payment was due the next day, and they finally checked their bank account and realized they were in serious trouble. Even Ethan started realizing things weren't just going to magically fix themselves. 7 p.m. Come on, man, don't do this. 7:30 p.m. I'll pay you back for the tools. 8 p.m. Mom and Dad are freaking out. 8:30 p.m. This isn't funny anymore. I spent that evening in my new apartment, enjoying the peace and quiet for the first time in years. I sat there, watching their messages roll in while eating takeout on my couch, a couch that nobody else had the right to use without my permission. It was a strange feeling having complete control over my own space after so long. The next day, August 1st, was when things really hit the fan for them. See, not only did they miss the mortgage payment, but that was just the beginning of their financial apocalypse. Remember all those subscriptions and services they'd been paying for with my rent money? Ethan's premium internet for streaming, his gaming subscriptions, Mom's fancy gym membership, Dad's golf club dues, their Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and whatever other streaming services they considered essential. All of it started bouncing. Their cards got declined everywhere. Ethan's Twitch stream went down mid-game because they couldn't pay the internet bill. You should have seen his chat explode, all 15 viewers very confused about why their favorite streamer suddenly disappeared mid-rant about his KD ratio. Then the real panic set in. Mom called me crying about how the mortgage company was sending notices. Dad left increasingly desperate voicemails about fixing this as a family. Ethan's messages got more frantic as his streaming setup started falling apart piece by piece as services were cut off. But here's the best part. They started turning on each other. Through my cousin, the only family member I still talk to, I heard about the epic fights breaking out in the house. Dad was blaming Mom for not saving money. Mom was blaming Dad for spoiling Ethan. Ethan was blaming them both for not having a backup plan. And of course, everyone was blaming me for being selfish enough to stop bankrolling their lifestyle. The cherry on top? Ethan had to get a real job, like an actual job at the local Target. Day one, he had to help carry groceries to cars in the summer heat. He posted on his Instagram about how hard manual labor is and how underappreciated service workers are. I nearly pulled a muscle trying not to comment, "Welcome to the real world" on his post. By the end of the first week, they'd tried everything to get me to come back. Dad came to my workplace, but security escorted him out when he started making a scene. Mom tried to guilt my boss into giving her my new address, but he just laughed and said no. Ethan's friends messaged me offering to pay for the tools, but it was too little, too late. They even sent our old pastor to talk some sense into me about honoring thy father and mother, conveniently forgetting the part about parents not provoking their children to anger. But the real karma? That was just getting started. Because what they didn't know was that missing one mortgage payment was about to trigger a domino effect that would change their lives forever. Their comfortable little world where Ethan was king and I was the ATM was about to come crashing down hard. See, my parents had been living way beyond their means for years, using my rent money to maintain their lifestyle and fund Ethan's dreams of internet stardom. Without my monthly $900, their entire budget went up in flames. First, the mortgage company started calling with late payment notices. Then the credit card companies began sending warning emails. Then, the utility companies threatened to cut services. Turns out, they'd been paying everything on a razor-thin margin, and one missed payment was all it took to send everything tumbling down like a house of cards. But let me break down how it all played out, because each family member's reaction was absolutely priceless. Let's start with Ethan. My precious brother's journey from future Twitch star to reality was a thing of beauty to behold from a distance. Week 1 at Target. He got written up for being on his phone during shifts, trying to keep his social media presence alive. Week 2. He had a meltdown because a customer disrespected him by asking him to help load groceries in the rain. By week 3, he was begging his streaming followers for donations to help through a rough patch. He made a grand total of $267. The internet getting cut off was the final nail in his influencer career coffin. His last stream was him literally crying about how unfair life is, while the video quality kept dropping lower and lower, until it finally went black mid-sentence. His 15 viewers were very supportive, though. They spammed F in the chat as his connection died. Mom's breakdown was more gradual, but no less satisfying. First, she had to cancel her fancy gym membership that she rarely used but loved to brag about. Then her weekly hair appointments that kept her perfectly highlighted. then her essential spa treatments that apparently kept her sane. She tried getting a job for the first time in 15 years, quickly discovering that professional enabler isn't an in-demand skill on LinkedIn. She ended up working at the same target as Ethan, just on a different shift to preserve what was left of his dignity. The irony of them both wearing those red vests after years of looking down on retail workers? Absolutely priceless. Dad's ego took the biggest hit. He'd always played the role of successful provider and head of household, even though I was the one actually providing for everyone. When he had to sell his golf clubs to make a partial mortgage payment, something in him just broke. His country club buddies stopped inviting him to their weekly games. Turns out friendship only goes as far as your wallet in those circles. He started avoiding the neighbors who'd seen him strutting around in his expensive golf attire for years. Last week, they finally had to put the house up for sale. They're moving into a 2-bedroom apartment next month, all 3 of them crammed into a space less than half the size they're used to. Ethan's furious because he has to share a room with Dad. Mom's devastated because the apartment doesn't have a proper entertaining space for her book club that she can't afford to buy books for anyway. The real cherry on top? I got promoted at work to lead mechanic position with a significant pay raise and a company truck. When word got back to them through mutual acquaintances, they tried reaching out again with a business proposition. Apparently, they wanted to invest in my success by moving in with me so we could pool our resources as a family. I replied with a screenshot of their mortgage statements showing how they'd exploited me for years and told them to lose my number. So here I am sitting in my paid-for apartment with all my bills up to date. My tools are safely stored in my own garage where no drunken frat boys can use them as beer pong props. I'm watching from a distance as my family learns some very expensive lessons about consequences and basic human decency. Ethan's still at Target, now in a 3-month competition with Mom for Employee of the Month. Neither has won yet, though Mom's apparently doing better at customer service than Ethan is. Turns out years of fake smiling at neighbors and family friends translates well to retail. Dad's delivering pizzas at night to supplement their income. Driving the same car he used to complain was beneath his status. Meanwhile, I'm getting ready to take a 2-week vacation with the money I've saved since stopping my family contributions. First real vacation I've had in years, and I don't have to feel guilty about spending money on myself instead of subsidizing Ethan's latest get-rich-quick scheme. Life's funny sometimes. For years, they treated me like an ATM, a servant, a backup plan they could fall back on while giving me nothing but criticism and disrespect in return. Now they're learning the hard way that you can't treat people like garbage and expect them to keep funding your lifestyle indefinitely. Actions have consequences, and they're experiencing those consequences in full force now. To everyone who followed this saga, thanks for the support and validation. Sometimes you need outside perspectives to confirm you're not the crazy one in a dysfunctional family. Edit. Since people are asking about the tools, yes, I did file in small claims court. The hearing's next month, and I've got all the documentation, photos, and even statements from Ethan's friends who were willing to testify about what happened that night. Should be an interesting day in court when Ethan has to explain to a judge why he thought using a $1,400 diagnostic scanner as a doorstop was acceptable behavior. Edit 2. Holy shit, this really blew up. Thanks for all the awards and supportive comments. And no, I won't be helping them get back on their feet financially. They can walk on their own for once. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about them finally facing reality and learning to support themselves like the adults they are. Final update. Just heard from my cousin that they're having a family meeting to discuss pooling resources to survive in the apartment. Apparently, they're expecting Ethan to contribute 1/3 of the rent. The same Ethan who called in sick to Target 3 times last week because streaming is his real job, and he needed to maintain his audience. Good luck with that plan. The cycle of enabling continues, just with different players and much higher stakes. I've finally found peace in my life without their constant drama and financial exploitation. Sometimes the best form of self-care is removing yourself from toxic situations, even when, especially when, those toxic situations involve family. Blood may be thicker than water, but at some point, you have to recognize when you're drowning and swim to shore, no matter who you leave behind in the process.